It was just a year ago that a proposal was presented to the Shelton Church Board and eventually to the MPI Board, Mission Projects, Inc., that the Shelton Church sponsor a mission trip to Belize. What you're going to hear about today is that trip. The dates were actually February 12 through 22. And there were 12 of us that attended, and we just want to tell you about the trip. We start right here in Shelton at our church. Many hours of meetings and scheduling, planning was done in preparation for the trip. The second, as I mentioned, was Mission Projects. That is the organization that Ardis and I were hired by back in 2006 to go to Belize, and Ardis and I spent the next 9 years there at the hospital. But this story is not about the hospital. This story, of course, you have to get there. And you have to land. This is an actual photo looking out of the plane. I believe, Ellie, this is your picture. No, and this is the area right around the airport there in Belize City. After landing, you clear customs, go through immigration, get your luggage, and then go outside, and you realize that you are in for a big change because the temperature was in the high 80s and the humidity was about 90 degrees. Dean, what was your reaction when you first walked out of that air-conditioned airplane out onto the tarmac of the airport?
Well, I love heat. I'm from the east side of the Cascades, and I grew up in much more temperate climate, hot in the summer and cold in the winter. And I stepped out of the plane and went, oh, this feels great. But it's humid.
Very humid, folks, in the high 90%. Ellie, what was your first reaction when you saw Belize, even in the airplane?
I couldn't believe I was there. Finally, after all the planning, I was actually there. And I was excited because I'd always been wanting to go on a mission trip, and I finally got to do one.
You see a lot of different people in that picture. Who are those people?
People from 4 different churches.
State Line in the Walla Walla Valley, City Church in the Walla Walla Valley, and I'm not sure the name of the fourth church down in Northern California.
It was called North Fork or something like that.
Up near Redding, in the Redding area.
And then our church.
And then our church here. I'm going to jump out of the trip here for a second. This is the Santa Familia Church that was chosen to be worked on. This is a picture that was taken in 2016.
Wow.
Before the roof went on. This is the church that I talked to you about a few months ago. I call it the One Block Church. It is a church that literally the members, they didn't wait for a mission group to do it. They began carrying 1 block per Sabbath to church with them. And this is what they built. The one on the left. You're going to see quite a transformation with those 2 buildings over the slides to come. This is the church today as the group first saw it. Ardis, when was the first time you ever went out to Santa Familia?
On this mission trip.
On this mission trip. You're going to see why inside. Ardis really had a struggle dealing with the metal chair, or the wooden benches. They aren't very comfortable. They're not padded like these are. And with her back problems, she didn't visit the churches as much as I did while we were living there. Every day began with worship, and we, as a group, we joined in with the hospital chaplain worship. And this is in the front of the hospital, and you see some of the team members in the picture. I've got a couple pictures of eating, but believe me, it seemed like that's all we did. Was the food what you were used to, Ellie, or was it different?
It was very different. For one thing, I wasn't used to having fresh fruit like that off the tree. From the tree to the table, that was great, having that fresh fruit. And I'm not used to eating beans and tortillas for breakfast. And that was what we had for breakfast a lot of times.
What was your favorite food, Dean?
I believe the fresh fruit was my favorite, and some of the drinks.
You got pretty excited about one meal. Tell us about that.
Oh, the Fry Jacks. Yeah, Fry Jacks are pretty impressive. It's a bread, almost like a pastry, and it has beans or other things put into it, wrapped up and cooked and served for breakfast. They're very tasty.
If I remember right, you were raised with Fry Jacks, but you called them something else.
Well, yeah, they were different. We called them doughboys in my household. And if you go down south to Louisiana, they're called beignets. So depends where you go. But they're just, every area has their special twist on how they're made. And I like the Belizean ones the best.
Very good. Ardis, did you have to cook all this food for us, or was there somebody else that did the cooking?
No, there is a cook there in the cafeteria, and which is where I worked the whole time, basically, that I was there. I was the cafeteria director there, and the lady that's there now was one of my cooks when we were there. And she did a pretty good job. And a lot of foods. As soon as she started serving these Belizean foods, I was home.
We traveled in this bus. The amazing part about the story of the bus is that it worked perfectly for us for 10 days. They dropped our group off at the hospital, at the airport, which you will see at the end. 2 days later, it returned to Belize City to pick up another group and broke down as it was taking them to their motel. We, as a group, were a small group, only 12 people total, and we were able to stay on the hospital grounds. And here we are. Not a real good picture because of the shadows, but that's everybody. When I first looked at the picture, I thought, oh, great. We have a picture of everybody in front of the bus. But you would look at that and go, is that a motorhome? It looks more like the front of a motorhome, but that's actually the same bus. Over on my left, yep, your left too, over on my left is Wilhelm. You will see several pictures of him. He was our driver and our in-country host. He knew everything about Belize, and a lot of stuff I think he actually made up just so that it was an exciting opportunity for the group.
Can I tell a funny
Yep.
story about Wilhelm?
Yeah, please do.
So when we first arrived, Grant said, Dean, you're going to love Wilhelm. He has an extraordinary personality. And he fulfilled that to the T. I sat in the front of the bus every day when we drove to the church to work, and I talked with Wilhelm, and we established a pretty good friendship. And one day we were driving to the church, and we got stuck behind a Catholic funeral procession, which is agonizingly slow. Everybody's carrying balloons and signs, like protest signs, but they're meaningful to them for the funeral. And we crawled along for what seemed like an hour. It was probably 30 minutes. Grant was in the pickup, and Grant came by the bus and was approaching the crowd, and Wilhelm in his Caribbean voice said, "Don't do it, Grant. Don't do it, Grant. Don't do it, Grant." And Grant finally found a side road that he snuck around the procession. But Wilhelm was just worried sick that Grant was going to try to push his way through that crowd. And he said, "It's going to go south. It's going to get real ugly."
Thanks, Dina. That's the first time I've heard that story. This is a picture that I took last September, or we took last September, when I went down to check out the possibility of this trip. The gentleman standing behind me is the head elder of the Santa Familia Church, and for the life of me right now, I'm forgetting his name.
Delfino Mejil.
Yep. Was there anybody, Ellie, this question's for you, was there anybody else, including the 12 of us, and all of the church members who came, was there anybody that moved faster than Delfino?
I don't think so. He was always on the go, unless it was Ella. Ella was always on the go too, and she was the oldest one in our group. I think she was like late 80s.
85.
And you had to take that brush out of her hand to make her stop. We'd all be cleaning up, and she'll still be brushing. It's like, it's time to quit now. Oh, I'm just got this little bit. Yeah, the 2
You'll
of them
see
together.
pictures of her.
The 2 of them together were really fast.
His son, and you'll see a picture of him, is the assistant elder. When I arrived in Belize, I was staying at the hospital, and the administrator called Delfino for me and set up a meeting. While we were meeting, Delfino shared with me that they had been praying for 3 years for a way that the church could be painted. We did not know that. I wondered why, after everything else they had done, why wouldn't they go ahead and paint? But remember, they brought 1 block per week to church. Those blocks cost about $1 a piece. So it wasn't a huge burden to, over a span of many months and possibly a year or two, to collect enough block to build the church with. The roof came as a donation, part of which MPI helped with, mission projects. The painting of the sanctuary, even though it was probably one of the more important things to do to get the block sealed, was beyond their financial means. The funds that were raised to help do this, a big part of it started right here in Shelton with the garage sale. All of you know about the garage sale that Ardis. How much money did you raise last summer?
Close to $4,000.
But I thought the figure was a total was more like 6,000. Your accounting doesn't add up.
That's because MPI, Mission Projects Incorporated, a year ago at our board meeting, voted to match dollar for dollar $2,000.
So now we have $6,000. But our budget for the project was $10,000. There were several private donations that came in, but a big portion of the gap between 6 and 10 actually came from the 12 team members that were on the trip. And 2 weeks before we left for Belize in February, we actually met our goal of $10,000 towards the project. That translates to $20,000 in Belize money. And the church, we spent in painting that church 11,000 Belizean dollars. Now you saw the picture. It's a pretty good sized building, but you can understand why it was such a challenge to the local church. Where were they going to come up with that kind of money? On Monday, when we went out to the church for the first time, and the group saw the church for the first time, we sat down on those wooden pews and had a meeting. It was there that I announced to the group that one of the individuals I had chosen to be the team leader or the foreman for the project, and you will see him. But this is a team meeting held in the sanctuary as everybody had just arrived on that Tuesday morning. One of our team members with a pressure washer. The entire building was pressure washed. Remember, that block had been sitting in probably for 7 or 8, maybe 9 years before the paint. And so the building had started to discolor pretty significantly. Pressure washing the front step. I need to draw your attention. What's across the street there, Dean?
Oh, that's a school.
What kind of school?
That is a Catholic school.
Did the kids ever come over to the church?
They did. They did. That school was full of hundreds of kids, and they would like to come over and sit on the front area of the church there in the shade and kind of feel like they were being part of the program going on. And they were really sweet kids.
Now we're going to look at some pictures of the actual painting process. These particular pictures were chosen because they show the classic position that you have to be in to properly paint.
Uncomfortable.
Was it uncomfortable? The back of the sanctuary. I believe that's Dean up on a ladder of all positions.
My friend, the ladder.
Now, if you're thinking about going on a trip in the future, please memorize this picture. If you cannot make that pose and literally apply gallons of paint, you're not a good candidate for a mission trip. But if you can get into that position for 6 or 7 days in a row and paint, when the group first saw the building, there's no way we're going to get this done, and you're going to see the results.
I have to agree with that, Grant. It seemed like a insurmountable task. The building was filthy and large, and few of us.
My finger stuttered, And
While you're getting that straightened out, I was going to talk a little bit about pressure washing. The elder that you saw the picture of, Delfino, he and I worked side by side washing for a couple days. And like Grant said, that old guy was so full of energy. I did a lot of washing, and then on one day, maybe the second day, I said, "Would you like to wash?" "Oh, yeah." And he grabbed a hold of that pressure washer wand. And then after that, we split. We would alternate about every 15 or 20 minutes washing. And he was so excited to be working. And they worked hard, right, with us. And they would work before we arrived and after we left.
Yeah, they had all the equipment drug out when we got there, so everything was ready to go. All we had to do was just jump in and start working.
Yeah, they would be like, "Where you guys been?" "We're ready to go."
this is a picture of the inside of the sanctuary. I think that's Ellie taking a rest on the pew there. And Jan walking through the building.
Ellie, take a rest.
Yeah. You're only going to see about 60 slides here. I had right at about 700 slides turned into me. So a lot of, boy, it's...
But but I made a photo book, and it has 42 pages in it, and it has all kind of pictures, so y'all see that when you get whenever you want to.
You're going to have it with you this afternoon?
It's there waiting for everybody to look at.
I would encourage you to look at it. She's done a beautiful job. This is the front of the church in its first transformation. The sealer paint is on. And that's what it looked like on the first Sabbath. One of the individuals that came by to visit, as a group leader, I have several requirements, even of the local people. The local people have to participate, and the pastor has to come help. And he promised me, and the first day went by, the second day went by, and I thought, well, it's going to go like most things do. The pastor's not going to show up. Well, there he is, on the ladder. How long did he work with you guys?
A day at least.
About a day?
A day, maybe half a day.
Did you get to know him?
A little bit. Yeah, I talked with him a bit. And he's a busy man.
5 churches?
It was either 5 or 12. I don't remember.
Anybody know?
It was between 5 and 12.
I think you're right with the 12. The individual that was the pastor of this church when Ardis and I lived there had 21 churches. I saw him preach twice in 9 years because my schedule was taking me to different churches on the week, different weekends, and his schedule and my schedule never matched. I heard him preach twice.
These churches are your kind of church, Troy. They are lay-led.
They are beginning to paint the original church here. Any memories of that, Ellie?
Oh, yeah. The far ants? I stepped in a far ant hill, and they did not like me. They said they had me for a snack. So I had to get rid of those guys. But, yeah, I got muddy because it was muddy there, too, from the rain. And you go to step, and you go slide into the mud. So, yeah, it was fun.
Ellie was trying to strip her clothes off right in public.
Oh, yeah. I had to run for that bathroom real quick. They were tearing me up.
You'll notice that the two buildings are very close together. And that created some challenges, but it was not part of the original plan from the church members. When they got the new church built, the idea was to tear the old church down. Well, The Sabbath school leaders all of a sudden saw a possibility of classrooms for the children's division, and the plan now is to keep both buildings up. They would have spread them further apart if they had realized what the long term was going to be. The focus here for the next few moments is going to be on how the church fulfilled their obligation to participate. Remember, folks, we arrived on January 12. We worked on the church for 10 days, and then we came back to Shelton.
February.
February 12th. February 12, 22.
You said January.
Oh. They needed to have ownership of this project. They needed to have elbow grease into it. And so one of the requirements was that they had to be there every day to help the group. These are some of the helpers. How young was the youngest, Ellie?
Still in diapers?
Painting?
Well, yeah, he actually painted. Yeah, one of the babies painted. But we did have some of the children helping, and they were seriously helping. And they'd climb the ladders, short ladders. They climbed those, and they sometimes got in the way trying to help. But they were helping. So we had some of the school kids over there.
How many do you think came every day?
I know Maybelle was there every day, and her husband. And the children, some of the children came quite often. A lot of them was there every single day.
What's your least favorite thing about painting?
The general subject.
Clean up.
Clean up. And the kids would clean all the brushes after we finished. They would do that for us because we were worn out, and they would just go back and start cleaning and work their tails off until those brushes were clean enough to eat off of.
If I remember right, there was a story from one of the children to another one about, no, that's not good enough.
Yep.
What's the story?
Got to do it better. Got to do it better. So I can't remember the name of the little girl that was the oldest one that was helping.
It was Maybelle's daughter.
She was meticulous on getting those brushes cleaned out. And it's difficult to clean roller brushes, too. It takes a lot of work.
Oh, this Ella.
Two of our locals, and with Ella, that Ellie mentioned.
Yeah, Ella was the painter that you couldn't get her to put her brush down.
Yeah. There's the baby. That baby there actually painted a couple strokes on the wall.
Sabbath morning, you see the finished coat on the old church, the original church, and the vehicles parked in front. What was the attendance like at that church?
It was good. I just don't remember the count. But the church was, most of the pews were filled with people. Did you have to sit on those wooden benches, or did they do something different? Well, we got to sit on those wooden benches.
Because of the issues I was having with my back and my leg while we were down there, they provided me with one of those plastic chairs. And one day I was sitting in the plastic chair, and all of a sudden there was an explosion.
Oh,
and the
yeah.
whole back blew out on my chair. Why I didn't go over backwards, I have no idea. Pretty good looking, isn't it?
Yeah, and I was going to point out to people that they don't have windows, Those are steel shutters that open and close to let air in and out, and no front door.
This would be a good time where Dean mentioned no front door. If you were listening earlier, I indicated that there was 20,000 Belizean dollars, and we only spent 11. What did the other 9,000 go for? It is our plan at this point to help them put doors on the sanctuary. We're still working on getting bids. Since I'm not there, or we're not there, we're back to Belizean time, if you understand what I'm saying. And we'll get the project done, and hopefully we'll get this building fully enclosed.
There's 2 back doors, 2 side doors, and then the big front door. So those are all just wide open. Anybody can come in. Animals or people can just waltz through the sanctuary. So I think that's an important goal to get them finished.
Ellie, what's going on here?
That is Sabbath school for the children. Jan and CJ did the Sabbath school program for the children, and that's in the older church, which they're now using as a Sabbath school class.
How many children do you think there were that day?
About 12, yeah. Yeah. All ages, they don't separate the children. They just all have in the same class, so it's all different ages. That's Jan and CJ.
When I blew this picture up, you can imagine what it did to the way they appeared. I did not want to be accused of them needing to go on a diet. And so I left the picture exactly as you see it. Children's story?
No, they had.
No, they sing a Spanish song for us.
Yeah.
Keep me straight. What's happening here, Dean?
Let's see. We had a baby dedication. Yeah, so the elders from their church and from our group gathered around to do that dedication.
Song service with two of our team members. One is City Church, the other one is State Line Church. We haven't said anything about this. Just one picture, and we're going to move on. It's past history. At least I'm hoping Dean says it's past history. I think he's still going through some recovery issues. Anything you want to say?
This was after we had church. They had prepared a really, really good meal of Belizean food, home cooked, and they fed all of us very well. And then we sat around and enjoyed the afternoon in the shade and talked and fellowshipped. And at that point, I was just kind of worn out. I was just sitting there trying to get through the afternoon.
Some of the group sitting there. The entire backyard of the church was a grove of trees. And so it was a comfortable place. And you see some of the chairs that they had brought in. They normally don't use those kind of chairs at the church.
They had in the back, I think we didn't mention yet, that they had a restroom facility out back with men and women, just two toilets. One side was for women and one for men. Or it could be either way, depending who was in there. And we painted that building also.
Putting the finish coat on the front of the sanctuary, of the new building. What did we do on Tuesday of the second week, Ellie? There's somebody I recognize in this picture.
I cannot pronounce that ruin, but we went to one of the bigger ruins, and that's me beside the sign advertising it just before we go across the water.
Ellie, that was the point of me picking on you. I wanted you to pronounce it.
No, that's too big of a word.
Ardis, do you know how to pronounce that?
Shenantonich begins with an X.
Do you see it well enough to figure it out? Not really. Not really.
that well, no.
And this pointed to
That.
the ferry. How many times, Ardis, do you think you and I have ridden that ferry back and forth over the years?
Oh, goodness. Out to Shenantonich probably 3 or 4 times a year. But there was another ferry that went over to a community called Spanish Lookout, which is a Mennonite community. And that one, I would have to say, probably about 50 times a year.
The group on the ferry, they were talking, it is a hand-cranked ferry. And the group was gathered around the operator talking with him. He was very friendly.
In my photo book, I have a good picture of the guy actually operating the crank, so you can see him doing that. So when you look at the book, you can see that picture.
They mentioned the pickup. One of the staff at the hospital realized that I was not getting around too well and lent me their pickup while we were there. And that pickup became a vital part of our entire trip. Here it is a taxi. It's about a mile from the ferry up to the ruins. Everywhere we went, what did we see?
Dogs.
All sizes?
Yeah, pretty well sizes, just stray dogs, mutt dogs.
Did we have a special dog in Santa Familia?
Yes, we did. We had this poor little dog. It was like the little brown and white one, brownie there. We would feed him beans and rice, beans and tortillas, and just anything we had, we tried to feed it to him because he was always hungry. And one day at the school, they have a lock and gate there at the school, and he got locked in there with another dog. And the other dog, they were just howling. And he was just sitting there looking. So we couldn't feed the other dog, so I sneaked down to the other end of the fence and handed him some food, and the little dog followed me. I gave him the food, and then I came back. And then when I came back, he followed me again. I gave him more food. Because we just want to make sure we fed him, because we've been feeding him all week. And we was worried when we leave, who's going to feed him now?
The church was about 2 blocks off the main road. They don't know this story. I had to go back out to the church after they left to pick up one of our ladders. Our puppy met me. He didn't know I was coming. Met me at the end of those 2 blocks and followed me all the way to the church. Oh. Unfortunately, I didn't have any food with me, but he knew that pickup.
Yeah.
And he was looking for a handout. This is somebody else we met. Dean, unfortunately, you flew home early, so I'm going to let Ellie talk about who is that?
That's a little monkey who was very adventurous. When we first got there, he was in the trees, and then later on, he came over and joined us for lunch. And a little beggar, oh yeah. And not only that, he also was a little thief. He grabbed one of our guys' hands and took his banana out of his hand. And the guy says, I wasn't arguing with him. That was a big monkey once he stretched out.
Yeah, he was tall. When he stood up on his hind legs, he would rival Dean for height.
Big one. And Dean and Wilhelm's told us that it was actually a female, and she was pregnant, but I can't tell that from here because he knew.
What's the name of this temple?
El Castle. They call it the castle. It's the second largest building in Belize at 130 feet tall.
How big were each one of those steps, Ellie?
Pretty big. You had to monkey walk up them steps, which is like you crawl. And it was a little difficult for me. But we did it. And we only went about halfway up. Then you had a little path to go around.
How many of the group actually made it to the top of the temple?
Everybody did.
Except me.
Well, except you. She didn't go. But
I
even our
stayed back
80-year-old,
down, took a nap.
even our lady that was 80-some years old, she even made it. She was huffing and puffing. I was worried about her. But she was huffing and puffing, but she did make it.
Do you know what these buildings are?
A kitchen. That's where the family that lived in the castle, that's where they used to go out and cook their meals.
And was this down on the ground or was this up on the temple side?
It was up on the temple side behind the temple.
So probably 75 to 100 feet above the floor.
They had steps going up to that, so you just follow the steps, little steps.
How'd you like to have this for the view out of your front door?
Nice.
What are in the distance you see in the middle there and then behind that?
Those
What-
little bitty people.
Are those more temples or buildings?
There's more buildings. And also Guatemala. That was
Right.
the borderline of it.
What Ellie is saying here is that you're actually looking into Guatemala in this picture. It's very, very close to Guatemala. Picture of the group as they were walking around. What did we do that evening, Ardis?
We went out to eat and to celebrate, because this was like the night before the group left. So we went out to a nice restaurant, one that Grant and I had not been to. I think it's new since we were there. But it was beautiful. You could just see for miles, and you could see into Guatemala from there too. And it was an outdoor restaurant, and had a really good time. Grant had pre-ordered the food, and this is what we ate right there. Everybody had the same menu, and yeah, it was a beautiful, beautiful evening.
So the point of this is to try to bribe some of you into a future trip. We, of course, didn't eat like this every day, but the group had done a phenomenal job. It was time to head back to the States, and we went out after our visit to Shenantonich. Actually, on the way back to the hospital, we stopped at this resort and had supper. The last afternoon that we were at Santa Familia Church, we were all surprised. Weren't you surprised, Ellie, at what happened?
Yes. I was very surprised. These two here are the brother and sister team, and they were there every single day, and they worked very hard. And Maybelle, she brought food for us to share. The last 3-4 days, she brought food for us, and it was all Belizean, so it was very good. And we shared our stuff with them too, but theirs was better.
There's the little dog that kept them company all week long.
This is the final group picture in front of the church. On the left there is the head elder, and again Wilhelm on the right. Standing right beside him in the white t-shirt is John. He was the one that made sure that everything got done right. He was the project foreman, and he and his new bride, they're getting married in what, 2 weeks?
Yeah, the 2nd of June.
His new fiance, because they had just gotten engaged as they came on this trip. Oh, Dean, there's the restroom.
So that thing, the roof had probably 4 inches of debris from the trees on it, and it was just green with mold and mildew, and we were able to wash that clean and then repaint it. And they actually, once we got it clean, Ramon was the son of the elder.
Mhm.
I think he did most of the painting on it. We helped a little bit.
That's actually Ellie in the doorway.
Yeah, we're putting the final coat on it.
Ellie was the chaplain from the hospital.
No, that's a picture of this.
But there's also another of the chaplain.
Oh, okay,
But it's in my book.
okay.
If you drove to Santa Familia, the village in Belize today, this is what you would see.
Very nice.
I have to tell a quick story. We are out of time. I have to tell a story that the head elder, so excited about all of this, called his daughter and sent her a picture, and she called him and said, "Dad, that looks like our church, the two buildings and everything, but that's not the Santa Familia Church." That could not happen in just 10 days. And so she lived about 20 miles away. Now you have to understand that gas is $13 a gallon. Okay, that's $6.50 US per gallon, 13 Belize dollars. She spent the money and drove from 20 miles away to see her mom and dad's church. Couldn't believe. We have heard since coming home that this has caused quite a stir in that community. And I'm hoping to hear someday that there are people attending this church now because they were attracted to the Lord's house. Thursday morning, the 22nd, they all got back on the bus. I had other things going on that day, and so I did not go with them. But this is a shot of an airport. It's not SeaTac.
No.
It's Belize City International Airport. Any thoughts or comments about the airport there?
We had to use the outside stairs going in and out both times. It was such a small airport, and no little funnel tunnel to go through. You had to go up and down the stairs.
Yep, that's right. That's the reason why I asked Dean what he thought about the humidity as they opened the door on the airplane. I believe, and I'm not this was one of the pictures that was given to me. Is this Miami?
Yes.
Okay. One of my least favorite airports. I have landed there many, many times while we were living in Belize. I thought I recognized the layout. And where are we now?
Home. Not right here.
Lisa, this is your picture. And I thought this was a good place to end the picture, or in the program today, sharing with you our experiences of being on this trip. In closing, Ellie, would you do it again?
Oh, yeah, in a heartbeat. I'm ready to go back today. Even with all the issues we had, I'm ready to go.
Dean? Yeah, there's work still to be done. We didn't show hospital pictures, but
No.
the hospital needs a lot of work, and the campus around there and that little church needs more work. And I didn't get to go see the Mayan ruins, so I want to get back. I wanted to do, someday go back and do snorkeling too, but that's a whole day's trip because it's so far away from the ocean where we stayed. But there's so many beautiful places to see and things to do, and so.
For your information on the hospital, as after you guys left, after the group left, there were some friends of ours that came down from Tennessee, and he's a building contractor, and they went in and they tore apart the labor and delivery room, and they expanded it. So, and I mean, it was phenomenal, the amount of work that he and some of the group that was there from Loma Linda that came in right after you guys left, that, I mean, they had it totally torn out in like 3 days. They had it torn out. He had the new studs in. He had the floor redone. He had the new plumbing in. It was just amazing. But we had to leave before they could finish it too, so.
I'm in the process right now of evaluating whether we should do this again. I would have to say to you right now that the answer to that question is probably yes. I didn't realize how much it had taken out of me and with my health issues and what have you, but our hearts are definitely in it, in going back. You will recall that the few weeks before Ardis and I left, I had my truck and trailer here loaded with items. Those items are going to be leaving in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I hope. They haven't gone yet. They're over in Walla Walla and will be headed down. Any questions that you would like answered that we can try to answer? Or comments? Oh, yeah. That was
Yes, I did. The day after my accident,
Yes.
I was scheduled to preach, and Grant said, "Are you going to preach still?" And I said, "Absolutely. That's one of the biggest reasons I came here. I've been preparing for this, to do this, and I'm going to speak." So God blessed me with the strength to get up and speak, and it was a neat experience to go through. It was.
Janice, thank you for that. Dean, matter of fact, why don't you close us in prayer?
I'd like to share a brief story. I know we're over time, but after the accident, they took me back to the hospital, did some x-rays, put a splint on me, but I had to go down the road 35 miles to get a CT scan. And we got in the driver's car and we drove to the bottom of the little hill below the hospital and turned onto the road, and the car died. And the only thing I could do was laugh. And I said, "Brother, this has been my day." But Dr. Jeff was the main doctor at the hospital. He was a very kind man. He loaned us his car, and we promptly took off, and we made it in time to get my scan. Had we been down the road a few miles and the car broke down, I would not have gotten my scan that day. So that was a blessing. Oh, dear Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for the privilege of sharing this and of having the opportunity and the experience to go down and meet these wonderful people. Lord, we pray that you would bless the Santa Familia church family, and that you would help them to continue to grow and to glorify your name in that community. And we just would like to lift them up to you right now, that you would bless them and encourage them and help the work that has been done there to be a witness in the neighborhood. And we pray for your strength in continuing in other mission opportunities. And this day we give you thanks and praise for being a wonderful and awesome God, and we yearn for Jesus to come back. And we look forward to that day. In his wonderful name we pray, amen. Oh yes, we'd like to invite everybody to join us for a meal in the fellowship hall. And you can have, there's a mix of food, but there are at least a few dishes that are authentic Belizean food and drink. Oh yes, we have roses for all the moms. We forgot about that. So we need to share those today.